Lena Carter's hands trembled as she signed the marriage certificate beside a name she'd never spoken aloud. Adrian Vale, heir to an empire built on blood and silence. The man she was marrying lay 3 floors above her, locked in a coma for 5 years, unaware that his father had just sold him a wife. The pen felt like a blade against her throat. One signature to save her dying father. One signature to trap herself forever. The lawyer slid the document away without meeting her eyes. "Congratulations, Mrs. Vale," he said coldly. "Your husband is waiting. If you're hooked, stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this tale travels." The hospital corridor smelled like antiseptic and desperation. Lena Carter sat in a plastic chair outside the ICU, her scrubs wrinkled from a double shift, her mind numb from exhaustion and fear. Through the glass window, she could see her father's chest rising and falling with mechanical precision, kept alive by machines that beeped in steady rhythm. Each beep a reminder of time running out. The doctor had been blunt 3 days ago. Without the transplant, he has weeks, maybe less. "The waiting list is long, Miss Carter, and without insurance," she'd stopped listening after that. The number he'd quoted might as well have been $1 billion. She was a nurse who worked 60-hour weeks just to keep the lights on in their tiny apartment. She had exactly $243 in her savings account and a mountain of medical school debt she'd abandoned when her father first got sick. There was no miracle coming. There was no wealthy aunt, no winning lottery ticket, no salvation. "Miss Carter?" Lena looked up to find a man in an expensive charcoal suit standing before her. He was older, maybe 60, with silver hair combed precisely and eyes that looked like they'd never softened for anything in his life. 2 men flanked him, bodyguards, she realized with a chill. "My name is Malcolm Gray," he said, his voice smooth and controlled. "I represent the Vale family. May I have a moment of your time?" She blinked, confused. "I think you have the wrong person." "I don't." He gestured to an empty chair beside her. "May I sit?" Every instinct told her to say no, to walk away, to pretend this conversation wasn't happening. But desperation had a way of drowning instinct. "What do you want?" she asked quietly. Malcolm sat, adjusting his cufflinks with practiced precision. "I want to offer you a solution to your problems. All of them." "I don't understand." "Your father needs a heart transplant. The surgery alone will cost $300,000. Post-operative care, medications, rehabilitation. We're looking at $500,000 conservatively." He paused, watching her face. "I'm prepared to cover every penny, immediately." Lena's breath caught. "Why?" "Because I need something from you." There it was, the trap hiding behind the miracle. "What?" Her voice barely rose above a whisper. Malcolm reached into his jacket and withdrew a leather portfolio. He opened it carefully, revealing a photograph of a man in his early 30s. Even in a still image, he was striking. Dark hair, sharp features, eyes that seemed to look through the camera rather than at it. "My employer's son," Malcolm said. "Adrian Vale. 5 years ago, he was attacked, shot 3 times at close range during what should have been a routine business meeting. He survived, but he never woke up." Lena stared at the photograph, her nurse's brain automatically cataloging possibilities. Traumatic brain injury, persistent vegetative state, locked-in syndrome. "I'm sorry," she said carefully, "but I don't see what this has to do with me." "Adrian requires round-the-clock medical care. His father, Victor Vale, has spared no expense keeping him alive. The finest doctors, the best facility, everything modern medicine can provide." Malcolm's expression remained neutral. "But there's a complication. Adrian's 25th birthday was 3 years ago. According to the terms of his grandfather's will, if Adrian remained unmarried by that age, his inheritance, including his voting shares in the family business, would pass to other members of the Vale family upon his death." Understanding crept in like ice water. "You can't be serious." "Adrian's cousins have been remarkably patient," Malcolm continued as if she hadn't spoken. "But patience has limits. There have been 3 attempts to discontinue his care in the past 18 months. His father has blocked each one, but the pressure is mounting. If Adrian were married, however, those shares would pass to his wife. The cousins would have no legal standing to make medical decisions. You want me to marry a man in a coma? Lena said it flatly, still not quite believing the words coming out of her own mouth. I want you to save 2 lives, Malcolm corrected. Your father's and Adrian's. This is insane. This is business. He withdrew another document from the portfolio. The marriage would be completely legal. You would live in the Vale mansion, acting as Adrian's primary caregiver. You'd have access to resources beyond anything you've ever imagined. In return, you'd protect Adrian's interests and maintain the appearance of a legitimate marriage. For how long? Until Adrian wakes up or passes away naturally. Malcolm's tone suggested he believed the latter far more likely than the former. Lena's hands clenched in her lap. And if I say no, then I walk away. You continue your father's care as best you can with your current resources. He checked his watch. I believe the hospital's billing department estimated you have until Friday before they transfer him to county care. Thursday. It was Thursday evening. She had less than 24 hours. Why me? She asked, her voice raw. There must be hundreds of women who jump at this. You're a registered nurse with excellent credentials. You're single, with no romantic entanglements that could complicate matters. You're in severe financial distress, which makes you motivated but also means you have something to lose if you breach the contract. Malcolm's gaze sharpened. And perhaps most importantly, you're invisible. No social media presence, no family beyond your father, no connections to anyone who might ask uncomfortable questions. You can disappear into the Vale household without causing ripples. Invisible. The word hit harder than it should have. Was that really what her life had become? So small and desperate that she could vanish without anyone noticing? I need time to think, she said. You have until midnight. Malcolm stood, setting the portfolio on the chair between them. Everything you need is in here. The marriage contract, medical records, financial arrangements. A car will be waiting outside the hospital at 11:30. If you're not in it, I'll assume your answer is no. He walked away without another word, his bodyguards falling into step behind him. Lena sat frozen, staring at the leather portfolio like it might explode. Slowly, she opened it. The marriage contract was terrifyingly thorough. She would live in this Vale mansion for the duration of Adrian's incapacitation. She would serve as his primary nurse, maintaining his care routine and protecting him from any threats, external or internal. She would present herself as his devoted wife to anyone outside the immediate family. She would speak to no one about the true nature of their arrangement. In return, her father would receive immediate medical care, all expenses covered. She would receive a salary of $15,000 per month, with a lump sum of $2 million if the marriage lasted more than 1 year. If Adrian died, she would inherit a trust fund that would guarantee her financial security for life. If she violated the contract's terms, she would forfeit everything, including her father's medical care. Lena read it 3 times, looking for loopholes, for escape clauses, for any hint that this wasn't exactly what it appeared to be. A gilded cage, with her father's life as the lock. At 11:15, she walked back into her father's ICU room. He looked so small in the hospital bed, his skin gray, his breathing labored even with the oxygen support. He'd been a carpenter before the heart disease. Strong hands, steady voice, the kind of man who fixed things instead of running from them. I'm sorry, Dad, she whispered, taking his hand. I don't know what else to do. His fingers didn't squeeze back. The machines beeped on, indifferent. At 11:25, she left the hospital with nothing but her purse and the leather portfolio. The black sedan was waiting exactly where Malcolm had said it would be. The driver opened the door without speaking. The ride took 40 minutes, leaving the city behind for winding roads that cut through dense forest. When the trees finally parted, Lena's breath caught. The Vale mansion wasn't a house. It was a statement of power carved in stone and glass, sprawling across manicured grounds that seemed to go on forever. Lights glowed in tall windows, but they didn't look welcoming. They looked like eyes watching, waiting. The sedan stopped at the front entrance. Malcolm Gray stood waiting, as if he'd never doubted she would come. This way, he said simply. Inside, the mansion was even more overwhelming. Marble floors, soaring ceilings, artwork that probably cost more than Lena would earn in a lifetime. Everything was beautiful and cold, like a museum dedicated to wealth. Malcolm led her through corridors that seemed designed to disorient, turning corners until Lena lost all sense of direction. Finally, they reached a set of mahogany doors. He opened them to reveal a library, dark wood shelves lined with leather-bound books, a massive desk, and sitting behind it, a man who could only be Victor Vale. He was in his 60s but looked like he could still crush someone with his bare hands. Broad shoulders, iron gray hair, eyes that assessed Lena like she was a horse he was considering purchasing. "Miss Carter." His voice was gravel and smoke. "Sit." Lena sat. Victor studied her for a long moment, then slid a document across the desk. "I assume Malcolm explained the situation." "Yes." "Then you understand this is not a fairy tale. You're not marrying my son because of love or attraction or any romantic delusion. You're marrying him because I need someone to keep him alive until I can eliminate the threats against him." "I understand." "Do you?" Victor leaned forward. "My son has been lying in a bed for 5 years, Miss Carter. He doesn't know you exist. He may never know. You'll spend your days caring for a man who cannot speak, cannot move, cannot respond. You'll live in this house under constant surveillance. You'll have no privacy, no freedom, no life of your own. And if you fail to protect him, if you break this contract, if you betray my family in any way, I will destroy you and everything you love." His tone never rose. He didn't need to shout. The threat was absolute. "I understand," Lena repeated, surprised her voice stayed steady. Victor sat back, something like satisfaction crossing his features. "Good. Then let's make this legal." The ceremony was a mockery of everything a wedding should be. No music, no flowers, no witnesses beyond Malcolm and Victor. A judge who'd clearly been paid to ask no questions performed the service in under 5 minutes. Lena wore the scrubs she'd been in all day. There was no ring, no kiss, no moment of joy. Just her signature next to Adrian Vale's on a marriage certificate that felt like a prison sentence. "Congratulations, Mrs. Vale," the judge said without emotion, collecting his papers. "You may now see your husband." Malcolm led her up a grand staircase to the 3rd floor. The hallway here was quieter, thicker carpet muffling their footsteps. At the end of the corridor, 2 men in dark suits stood guard outside a door. They stepped aside without comment as Malcolm approached. "Adrian's room," he said, opening the door. "From this moment forward, this is your responsibility." Lena stepped inside and the door closed behind her. The room was large and surprisingly warm, nothing like a hospital. A hospital bed dominated the center, surrounded by medical equipment that hummed softly. Monitors tracked heart rate, blood pressure, oxygen levels. An IV stand held bags of fluids. Everything was top of the line, maintained with obvious care. And in the bed, Adrian Vale. The photograph hadn't done him justice. Even unconscious, even ravaged by 5 years of stillness, he was striking. Dark hair spread across the pillow, sharp features softened by stillness, long lashes resting against his cheeks. He looked like he was sleeping peacefully, like he might wake any moment and ask what stranger was standing in his room. But he didn't wake. Lena moved closer, her nurse's training taking over. She checked the monitors, noting stable vitals. Checked the IV placement, the catheter, the feeding tube. Everything was perfect, maintained by professionals who knew exactly what they were doing. She pulled up a chair beside the bed and sat, exhaustion crashing over her now that the adrenaline was fading. "Hi," she said softly to the unconscious man who was now legally her husband. "I'm Lena. I'm sorry we had to meet like this." Adrian didn't respond. The monitors beeped steadily. "I signed my life away tonight to save my father," she continued, talking more to fill the silence than because she expected an answer. "Your father paid for a heart transplant in exchange for me marrying you. I know how insane that sounds. Trust me, I know." She reached out, hesitating, then gently took Adrian's hand. His skin was warm, his fingers long and elegant. There were scars on his knuckles, faded but still visible. "I'll take care of you," she promised quietly. "I don't know what else I can do, but I can do that." The door opened and a woman in her 50s entered, wearing a housekeeper's uniform. She carried fresh linens and regarded Lena with obvious curiosity. "I'm Mrs. Chen," she said, her accent crisp and British. "I maintain the household. You'll take your meals in your room. It's next door. Breakfast at 7, lunch at noon, dinner at 6. Don't be late. Thank you, Lena said. Mrs. Chen's expression softened slightly. He's a good man, mister. Adrian, whatever brought you here, remember that. She left before Lena could respond. Alone again with her unconscious husband, Lena felt the weight of what she'd done finally settle on her shoulders. She'd sold herself to save her father. She'd married a stranger she might never truly meet. She'd walked into a world of power and danger where money bought silence and mercy was never free. And there was no escape. The monitors beeped on through the night as Lena sat vigil beside Adrian Vale, her husband in name only, wondering what kind of man lay trapped behind those closed eyes, and whether she would survive long enough to find out. Morning came too quickly. Lena woke slumped in the chair beside Adrian's bed, her neck stiff and her mouth dry. Sunlight streamed through tall windows she hadn't noticed the night before, revealing that Adrian's room overlooked gardens so perfectly manicured they looked artificial. Good morning, Mrs. Vale. Lena jerked upright to find Malcolm standing in the doorway, immaculate as always, despite the early hour. You'll want to shower and change, he said. Your belongings have been moved to your quarters. Mrs. Chen will bring breakfast at 7. Your first briefing with Mr. Vale is at 8. Briefing? On Adrian's care routine, security protocols, and household rules. Malcolm's expression remained neutral. This is a working arrangement, Mrs. Vale. You'll be expected to perform your duties competently. He left without waiting for acknowledgement. Lena's room adjoined Adrian's through a connecting door. It was beautiful in an impersonal way. Expensive furniture, neutral colors, everything arranged with hotel-like precision. Her few possessions looked pathetic scattered on the massive bed. Someone had unpacked her duffel bag, hanging her 3 pairs of scrubs in a closet built for hundreds of garments. The bathroom was larger than her old apartment's bedroom, all marble and gold fixtures. Lena showered quickly, hyper-aware that she was being watched. Cameras, probably, or staff who reported everything. In this house, privacy was an illusion. She dressed in clean scrubs and returned to Adrian's room. In daylight, she could see details she'd missed. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with volumes on history, philosophy, economics. A chess set sat on a side table, frozen mid-game. Personal touches that suggested Adrian had been a real person once, not just a body in a bed. You're punctual. Good. Victor Vale stood in the doorway, filling the space with his presence. He entered without invitation, moving to his son's bedside with the confidence of someone who owned everything he touched. His routine is non-negotiable, Victor said, checking the monitors with practiced ease. Morning care at 6, bathing, grooming, range of motion exercises. Medication at 7 and 7 p.m. Position changes every 2 hours to prevent pressure sores. You'll document everything in his medical log. Any deviations, any changes in his condition, you report immediately to Dr. Reeves. Who's Dr. Reeves? Adrian's neurologist. He visits weekly. Victor's gaze shifted to Lena, assessing. You're a competent nurse, I'm told. Prove it. It wasn't a request. Lena spent the next hour demonstrating her skills while Victor watched with critical attention. She performed morning care with gentle efficiency, talking to Adrian as she worked. I'm going to move your left arm now. Tell me if anything hurts. Ridiculous, speaking to someone who couldn't hear, but it felt wrong to treat him like an object. Victor's expression remained unreadable throughout. Adequate, he finally said. But understand this, Mrs. Vale. My son has survived 5 years because of vigilance. The moment you become complacent is the moment you fail, and failure is not acceptable. I understand. Do you? Victor moved closer, his voice dropping. Adrian has enemies. In this house, in this family. People who smile at you during dinner and plot his death before dessert. Your job is to keep him alive until I identify and eliminate every threat. That means trusting no one. Not the staff, not the cousins, not even me. Lena's blood ran cold. You're saying someone in your own family wants him dead? I'm saying this family is built on power, and power attracts predators. Victor straightened his cuffs. Adrian was supposed to inherit everything. Instead, he's been lying here for 5 years while his cousins position themselves to take what should be his. The only thing stopping them is that marriage certificate you signed. You're not his wife, Mrs. Vale. You're his shield. Act like it. He left without another word. Lena sank into the chair, her mind reeling. She'd known this was dangerous. She hadn't understood it was a war zone. The days blurred into routine. Wake at 5:30. Morning care for Adrian. Breakfast alone in her room. Medication administration. Physical therapy exercises to maintain muscle tone in his motionless limbs. Lunch. More care. Documentation. Dinner. Evening medication. Overnight monitoring. She saw no one except Mrs. Chen, who brought meals with silent efficiency, and occasional visits from Dr. Reeves, who examined Adrian with clinical detachment and asked Lena questions that felt like tests. How many times did you reposition him last night? 4 times. 2 a.m., 4 a.m., and 6 a.m., plus the morning routine. Any changes in muscle tone? No, doctor. Any fluctuation in his vitals? His heart rate elevated to 85 around 3 a.m., but it normalized within 20 minutes. I noted it in his log. Dr. Reeves would nod, scribble notes, and leave without praise or criticism. The isolation was suffocating. Lena had no phone, confiscated the first day for security reasons. No internet access except a monitored tablet for Adrian's medical records. No contact with the outside world except brief, supervised calls to check on her father. The surgery was successful, the hospital's social worker reported a week after Lena had signed the contract. Your father is in recovery. All expenses have been covered by an anonymous donor. Anonymous. Right. Can I speak to him? He's sedated, but I can tell him you called. Tell him I love him, Lena said, her voice breaking. Tell him I'm okay. Both might be lies. She didn't know anymore. The only constant was Adrian. Day after day, Lena cared for the unconscious man who'd become her entire world. She learned the rhythm of his breathing, the exact temperature of his skin, the precise angle of his head that seemed most comfortable. And she talked to him. At first, it was just narration. I'm going to check your IV now. Time for your medication. But slowly, inevitably, it became more. I read your books, she told him one afternoon, returning a volume of Marcus Aurelius to the shelf. Meditations, heavy stuff. Were you into philosophy, or was this just for show? No answer, never an answer. My dad used to read to me when I was little, she continued, settling into the chair that had become as familiar as her own skin. Nothing fancy, Dr. Seuss, Where the Wild Things Are. He'd do all the voices. She smiled at the memory. I miss that. Miss him. She picked up another book, this one about chess strategy. Were you any good? At chess, I mean. There's a game set up over there. Looks like you were winning. Lena studied the board, trying to imagine Adrian sitting across from an opponent, planning moves, seeing patterns. What kind of mind did he have? What thoughts had filled his head before the bullet stole them away? I'm sorry this happened to you, she whispered. I know you didn't ask for any of this. The attack. The coma. Me. She reached out, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. I'm sorry I'm the wife you never chose. The monitors beeped steadily. Adrian's chest rose and fell. Nothing changed, except something in Lena did. She started reading to him every evening. History books, philosophy, news articles from the medical tablet, anything to fill the silence with something other than machine sounds and her own loneliness. She played music, classical mostly because it seemed to fit the room. Sometimes jazz. Once, experimentally, rock music. His heart rate had jumped slightly during that. Coincidence, probably. But she'd noted it in his log anyway. She told him about her life, growing up poor, putting herself through nursing school, the moment she'd had to choose between her career and her father's care. I wanted to be a doctor, she admitted one night, exhausted from a 16-hour day. Sounds stupid now, but I had a plan. Med school, specialization in cardiology. I was going to save people like my dad. She laughed bitterly. Instead, I'm here, married to a stranger, playing nurse to a man who'll probably never know my name. But even as she said it, she didn't quite believe it anymore. Because there were moments, brief, impossible moments, when she could swear Adrian heard her. The subtle change in his breathing when she started reading. The way his fingers seemed to relax when she held his hand. The fact that his heart rate stabilized whenever she spoke. I'm losing my mind, she told Mrs. Chen one morning. I keep thinking he's responding. Mrs. Chen set down a breakfast tray with quiet precision. Mr. Adrian was always aware, even when others didn't see it. Perhaps he still is. That's not medically possible. Many things in this house aren't medically possible, Mrs. Vale. The housekeeper's expression was unreadable. But they happen anyway. She left before Lena could ask what she meant. 3 weeks into her new life, Lena met the cousins. She was reading to Adrian, a book on Renaissance art, when voices echoed from the hallway. Young voices, expensive and sharp. The door opened without warning. 2 women entered, both in their 20s, both dressed in designer clothes that probably cost more than Lena's car. One was blonde and willowy, the other dark-haired and curvy. Both looked at Lena like she was a stain on expensive upholstery. "So you're the nurse Victor bought," the blonde said, her smile razor-sharp. "I'm Veronica Vale. This is my sister, Isabel. We're Adrian's cousins." "Nice to meet you," Lena said, carefully, standing. "Is it?" Isabel circled Adrian's bed like a shark. "We heard Uncle Victor was getting desperate. Didn't realize he'd gone this far." "I don't understand." "The marriage." Veronica's laugh was crystalline and cruel. "Did you actually think this would work? That you could just show up, sign some papers, and become one of us?" "I'm not trying to become anything," Lena said quietly. "I'm just taking care of Adrian." "Adrian's dead," Isabel said bluntly. "He's been dead for 5 years. He's just too stubborn to stop breathing." Lena's hands clenched. "He's not dead. He's recovering." "From 3 bullets to the chest? From 5 years in a coma?" Veronica shook her head. "You're delusional, or lying. Either way, you're wasting everyone's time." "I think you should leave," Lena said, her voice steady despite the fear crawling up her spine. "We'll leave when we're ready." Isabel moved closer to Adrian, reaching out as if to touch him. Lena stepped between them. "Don't." The cousins stared at her, surprised. Then Veronica laughed, genuinely this time. "Well, maybe Victor chose better than I thought." She headed for the door, Isabel following. "Enjoy playing house, nurse. It won't last." They left in a cloud of expensive perfume and veiled threats. Lena's hands were shaking. She returned to Adrian's side, taking his hand. "Your family is terrifying," she told him. "Just so you know." That night she woke to the sound of footsteps outside Adrian's door. Not Mrs. Chen's efficient stride. Something quieter, stealthier. Lena slipped out of bed, moving to the connecting door. Through the crack she could see a shadow in Adrian's room. Someone standing over his bed. Her heart hammered. She grabbed the only weapon available, a heavy medical textbook, and eased the door open. The figure spun. In the dim light from the monitors, Lena recognized one of the guards, who sometimes stood in the hallway. "What are you doing?" she demanded. "Checking on Mr. Vale," he said smoothly. Too smoothly. "No one checks on him without my permission." Lena moved between the guard and Adrian, clutching the textbook like a shield. "Get out!" "Mrs. Vale, I don't think—" "Out, now, or I call Victor." For a moment, the guard's expression hardened. Then he smiled, empty and cold. "Of course. My apologies." He left without argument. But Lena didn't sleep the rest of the night. She told Victor about it the next morning during his routine visit. He listened without comment, then made a phone call. The guard was gone by noon. "You did well," Victor said later, his tone as close to approval as she'd ever heard. "But don't expect gratitude. In this house, vigilance is expected. Failure is punished. There's no middle ground." "I understand." "Do you?" He studied her. "You've been here a month, Mrs. Vale. You're starting to care about my son. I can see it. Be careful. Caring makes you vulnerable. And vulnerability kills." But it was too late for that warning. Because somewhere between the endless days of caring for Adrian, the nights of reading to him, the moments of imagined connection, Lena had stopped seeing him as an obligation. She'd started seeing him as a person. A man trapped in silence, surrounded by enemies, protected only by a woman who'd sold her freedom for her father's life. "I won't let anything happen to you," she promised Adrian that night, holding his hand in the darkness. "I don't know who you are. I don't know if you can hear me, but I won't let them hurt you." Adrian's hand was warm in hers, his breathing steady. his heart beating on, oblivious to danger or devotion or the strange woman who'd become his only shield against the darkness closing in. And in that moment, Lena understood the truth that Victor had tried to warn her about. She was no longer just playing a role. She was falling in love with a ghost. The realization should have terrified her. Instead, it settled over Lena like inevitability, like something that had been building since the moment she'd first taken Adrian's hand and promised to protect him. She was falling in love with a man who couldn't love her back. The days continued their relentless rhythm, but now every moment felt different. When Lena bathed Adrian, carefully washing his shoulders and arms, she noticed the strength still hidden in his muscles despite 5 years of stillness. When she combed his hair, she found herself wondering what color his eyes were, information absent from his medical charts, irrelevant to his care but suddenly desperately important to her. "You're being ridiculous," she told herself one morning, standing in her bathroom and staring at her reflection, dark circles under her eyes from too many sleepless nights, hair pulled back in a perpetual ponytail, scrubs that hung looser now. She'd lost weight without noticing. "He's your patient, your responsibility, nothing more." But when she returned to Adrian's room and saw him lying there, peaceful and unreachable, her heart betrayed every rational thought. "Good morning," she said softly, checking his monitors. "All stable, always stable. I brought you something new today." She'd found a collection of poetry on his shelves: Neruda, Frost, Yeats. The pages were worn, margins filled with penciled notes and handwriting she'd come to recognize as Adrian's. Strong strokes, precise letters, the marks of a careful mind. "Listen to this," she said, settling into her chair and opening to a dog-eared page. "I have spread my dreams under your feet. Tread softly, because you tread on my dreams." She paused, tracing the penciled note Adrian had written beside it. "Truth in vulnerability. You like this one. I can tell." His chest rose and fell. The feeding pump hummed. Nothing else. "I wonder what your dreams were," Lena continued, closing the book but keeping it in her lap. "Before all this? Did you want to run your father's empire? Or did you want something different, something softer?" She reached out, taking his hand in both of hers. His fingers were long and elegant, the nails she trimmed every week perfectly maintained. There were calluses on his palms, faded now, but still visible. Working hands. Hands that had done more than sign contracts and make deals. "I wish I could ask you," she whispered. "I wish you could tell me who you really were." The door opened and Dr. Reeves entered, his expression its usual mask of professional detachment. Lena released Adrian's hand quickly, feeling caught at something improper. "Mrs. Vale," he greeted, moving to check the monitors. "How was the night?" Uneventful, his vitals remained stable, no fluctuations. Dr. Reeves performed his examination in silence, checking reflexes that never responded, shining lights into eyes that never tracked. When he finished, he made notes on his tablet, then fixed Lena with an assessing look. "You're spending a lot of time with him," he observed. "I'm his nurse. That's my job." "Your job is to maintain his physical condition, not to read poetry to him or talk for hours about philosophy and art." Dr. Reeves' tone wasn't unkind, but it was pointed. "I've reviewed your documentation, very thorough, perhaps too thorough. You're noting emotional responses that aren't medically possible in his condition." Lena's spine stiffened. "I note what I observe. You note what you want to see." He closed his tablet. "I understand this situation is unusual, lonely even, but Adrian Vale is in a persistent vegetative state. He has no awareness, no consciousness. The man you're talking to doesn't exist anymore." "Then why does his heart rate change when I read to him?" "Coincidence. Random fluctuation. The body's autonomic responses don't indicate consciousness." Dr. Reeves moved toward the door, then paused. "Be careful, Mrs. Vale. In cases like this, caregivers sometimes develop attachments. They project personality onto the patient, create imaginary responses. It's a coping mechanism, but it's not healthy for either of you." He left before Lena could respond. She sat in silence for a long moment, anger and doubt warring inside her. Was she imagining things? Creating a fantasy to make her isolation bearable? She looked at Adrian, so still, so silent. Tell me I'm not crazy, she said quietly. Give me something. Anything. Nothing. Just the steady beep of monitors and the whisper of the ventilator she'd weaned him off of 2 weeks ago. His breathing was completely independent now, a victory Dr. Reeves had noted clinically, without acknowledging how many hours Lena had spent encouraging it. The rest of the day passed in frustrated silence. Lena performed her duties mechanically, speaking only when necessary for documentation. But that evening, she couldn't maintain the distance. I don't care if you can't hear me, she told Adrian as she prepared his evening medication. I don't care if this is all in my head. I'm still going to talk to you because you deserve to be treated like a person, not a body. She administered his medication, then settled in to read. But instead of poetry, she found herself talking about her day, about Mrs. Chen's concerned looks, about Dr. Reeves' warnings, about the crushing loneliness of living in a mansion full of people while being completely isolated. Your father came by this morning, she said, asked if there had been any more incidents. I told him no. He seemed disappointed. I think he was hoping someone would try something so he could eliminate more threats. She paused. Does he love you? Or is this all just about power and inheritance? The question had been haunting her. Victor visited every day, checked Adrian's condition with meticulous care, ensured every detail of his son's care was perfect. But there was no warmth in it, no grief, just cold determination. Maybe that's how people like him love, Lena mused, through action instead of words, through protection instead of tenderness. She thought about her own father, recovering now from surgery she could never have afforded. He'd told her he loved her every single day of her life, even when they'd had nothing, even when he'd been too sick to work, he'd never let her doubt it. I need to call him soon, she said. They're limiting my calls to once a week now. Security protocols, they say. I think they're just making sure I don't tell anyone what's really happening here. Her phone privileges had been reduced after she'd asked too many questions about her father's post-surgical care. Malcolm had been polite but firm. Your father is receiving excellent care. Trust that we have his best interests in mind. Excessive contact raises security concerns. Translation, shut up and do your job. I'm trapped here just like you are, Lena told Adrian. Different kind of trap, maybe, but still a cage. She took his hand again, no longer caring if it was professional. At least we're trapped together. That night, she dreamed of Adrian waking, of his eyes opening, focusing on her face, of him speaking her name. But when she woke at 3 a.m. to perform his repositioning, reality crashed back. He was exactly as he'd been, as he would always be. The weeks blurred together. Lena fell into deeper routine, her world shrinking to the dimensions of Adrian's room. She learned every inch of his body through caregiving. The scar on his left shoulder from childhood, the surgical scars from where they'd removed the bullets, the exact curve of his spine. She knew his smell, his warmth, the rhythm of his breathing better than she knew her own. And she continued to look for signs of awareness. The way his breathing deepened when she read certain passages. The slight relaxation in his jaw when she played Mozart. The faint increase in his heart rate when she held his hand. I know you're in there, she whispered during late-night vigils. I don't care what the doctors say. I can feel you. 2 months into her imprisonment, that's how she'd started thinking of it, Veronica and Isabel returned. This time they brought their brother Marcus, a sharp-eyed man in his 30s who assessed Lena like she was a business problem to solve. Still here? Veronica asked, draping herself across the chair Lena usually occupied. I thought you'd have run away by now. Why would I run? Lena stood protectively near Adrian's bed. Because this is insane, Isabel said flatly. You're wasting your life playing nurse to a vegetable. Don't call him that, Marcus laughed, the sound devoid of humor. Protective, isn't she? Victor chose well. A desperate nurse with nowhere else to go. The perfect guard dog. What do you want? Lena's voice stayed level through sheer force of will. We want to talk sense into our uncle, Marcus said, moving closer to Adrian's bed. Lena shifted to block him. He noticed, eyebrows rising. Easy. I'm not going to hurt him. I'm just curious what kind of care he's receiving that costs $500,000 a year. Excellent care. Is it? Veronica stood, circling around to Adrian's other side. Because from where I'm standing, he looks exactly the same as he did 5 years ago. No improvement, no deterioration, just existing. Recovery from traumatic brain injury takes time, Lena said. Recovery? Isabel's laugh was sharp. You actually think he's going to wake up? Yes. The cousins exchanged glances. Then Marcus smiled, and it was the coldest thing Lena had ever seen. You poor deluded fool, he said softly. You've actually convinced yourself this means something, that you matter, that he'll wake up and fall in love with his devoted nurse, and you'll live happily ever after. I don't think that, Lena said, but her face burned. Don't you? Veronica moved closer, her voice dropping to something almost kind. Listen, I don't know what Victor promised you, but this doesn't end well. Adrian is never waking up, and when Uncle Victor finally accepts that, when he pulls the plug, do you know what happens to you? The contract. The contract pays you off and throws you away, Marcus interrupted. You think you're family now? You're an employee, and employees are expendable. Get out, Lena said quietly. We're just trying to help you see reality, Isabel said. Out, now, or I call security. Veronica straightened, smoothing her designer dress. Security works for Victor, darling, not for you. But fine, we'll go. Just remember what we said when this all falls apart. They left in a cloud of expensive perfume and casual cruelty. Lena's hands were shaking. She locked the door behind them, something she'd started doing after the incident with the guard, and returned to Adrian's side. They're wrong, she told him fiercely. You're not a vegetable. You're not gone. I know you're still in there. But doubt crept in like poison. What if they were right? What if she was delusional, projecting consciousness onto autonomic responses, falling in love with a fantasy? Prove them wrong, she whispered, taking both his hands. Please, give me something real. His hands were warm in hers. His chest rose and fell. The monitors beeped their endless rhythm. Nothing changed. Lena broke. She didn't mean to cry. She'd held everything in for so long, the fear, the loneliness, the desperate hope. But suddenly it was too much. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she clung to Adrian's unresponsive hands. I can't do this, she sobbed. I can't keep talking to someone who'll never answer. I can't keep falling in love with a ghost. It's killing me. She laid her head on the bed beside him, shoulders shaking with the force of her crying. All the professional distance she'd tried to maintain shattered. All the walls she'd built crumbled. I wish I'd met you before, she whispered into the sheets. I wish I'd known you when you were whole. I wish... Adrian's finger moved. Lena froze, certain she'd imagined it. But no. There it was again, the slightest twitch of his index finger against her palm. She lifted her head slowly, afraid to breathe, afraid the movement would stop if she acknowledged it. Adrian's face remained peaceful, unchanged, but his finger moved again, unmistakable now. Adrian? Her voice cracked. Can you hear me? Nothing. Just that small, impossible movement. Lena grabbed her tablet with shaking hands, pulling up his medical records. She documented the time, the observation, her own emotional state. Then she sat perfectly still, holding his hand, waiting. 5 minutes later, it happened again. A definite finger twitch, slightly stronger than before 4. Oh my God, she breathed. You're in there. You're actually in there. She wanted to scream, to run for Dr. Reeves, to tell Victor, but something stopped her. The memory of the guard in Adrian's room, the cousin's threats, Victor's warning that Adrian had enemies everywhere. If people knew he was showing signs of consciousness, would they increase their efforts to kill him? Or would they accelerate their timeline? Lena made a decision that probably violated every medical protocol she'd ever learned. She documented the movement in Adrian's private log, the one only she and Dr. Reeves could access, but told no one else. It's our secret, she told Adrian quietly, until I know it's safe, until I know who to trust. Over the next week, the movements increased, subtle things that could easily be missed or dismissed as reflexes. A finger twitch when she spoke, a slight change in his breathing pattern when she read. Once, impossibly, what felt like the faintest squeeze of her hand. Lena became obsessed with documenting everything, looking for patterns. The movements were stronger in the evening. They increased when she talked about emotional topics. They stopped completely when anyone else was in the room. You're protecting yourself, she realized one night. You know you're vulnerable. You know there are people who want you dead, so you're hiding. If Adrian could hear her, and she was increasingly certain he could, then he'd been aware for weeks, maybe months, trapped in his own body, unable to move, unable to speak, listening to everything around him. The thought was horrifying. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, holding his hand. "I'm so sorry you've been alone in there. But I'm here now, and I won't let anyone hurt you, I promise." His finger twitched against her palm. Once, twice, 3 times. Lena's breath caught. Was he trying to communicate? She grabbed a pen and paper. "Once for yes, twice for no," she said. "Can you understand me?" A pause that felt like eternity. Then, one twitch. "Yes." Tears streamed down Lena's face. "Are you in pain?" 2 twitches. "No." "Can you hear everything?" 1 twitch. "Yes." "Do you know why I'm here about the marriage?" A longer pause. Then 1 twitch. "Yes." Lena's heart broke. He'd been conscious for their wedding. He'd heard her vows, heard his father's threats, heard everything and been unable to protest. "I'm sorry," she said again. "I'm so sorry they did this to you, to us." No response. She didn't know if there was a question to answer. "We'll figure this out," she promised. "I don't know how, but we will. Just keep fighting. Keep coming back." 1 twitch. "Yes." From that night forward, everything changed. Lena continued the routine of his care, but now she knew he felt every touch, heard every word. She became even more careful with his dignity, talking him through every procedure, asking permission even though his responses were limited. "I'm going to help you sit up now," she'd say. "Is that okay?" 1 twitch. "Yes." "Are you comfortable?" 1 twitch. "Yes." "Do you want me to read?" 1 twitch. "Yes." Their communication was painfully limited, but it was real. Adrian was real. And slowly, carefully, Lena began to understand the man trapped inside the silent body. She learned he preferred philosophy to fiction, that he hated the medication that made him groggy, that he grew agitated when his cousins visited, his heart rate spiking, his breathing quickening despite no visible change in his expression. "I won't let them near you," she assured him after a particularly tense visit from Marcus. "I'll protect you." 1 twitch. Then, after a pause, 3 more in rapid succession. Lena frowned, trying to interpret. "I don't understand. Are you trying to tell me something?" More rapid twitches, frustrated and irregular. "I'm sorry. I'm not." She paused, thinking. "Do you need a better way to communicate?" 1 strong twitch. "Yes." Lena spent the next 2 days researching. She found information on locked-in syndrome, on alternative communication methods for patients with limited motor control. She created a simple system using eye blinks and finger movements. "Once for A, twice for B," she explained, showing him the alphabet chart. "It'll be slow, but we can do this. Are you willing to try?" 1 twitch. "Yes." The first word took 20 minutes. DANGER. Lena's blood ran cold. "You're in danger. From who?" But Adrian had exhausted himself. His finger lay still, no energy left for more communication. "Rest," Lena said, fear and determination warring inside her. "We'll talk more tomorrow. Just rest." That night, she barely slept. She kept vigil beside Adrian's bed, jumping at every sound in the hallway, watching the door like enemies might burst through at any moment. When Victor made his morning visit, Lena studied him with new eyes. This man had forced his son into a marriage without consent. He'd turned Adrian into a pawn in a power game. Could she trust him with the knowledge that Adrian was waking up? "Everything normal?" Victor asked, checking the monitors. "Yes," Lena lied. "Everything's fine." Victor's gaze sharpened. "You're certain?" "I'm certain." He stared at her for a long moment, and Lena forced herself to hold his gaze. Finally, Victor nodded. "Good. Keep it that way." When he left, Lena released a breath she hadn't known she was holding. Adrian's finger twitched against her palm. A warning or a thank you, she wasn't sure. Over the following days, Adrian slowly spelled out messages. Each word was exhausting for him, leaving him drained for hours. But the picture that emerged was terrifying. FAMILY. Traitor. Someone in your family betrayed you? Lena asked. Someone set up the attack? One twitch. Yes. Do you know who? Two twitches. No. But you have suspicions? One twitch. Yes. Is it your cousins? A pause. Then, Maybe. Your father? A longer pause. Then, Dontknow. Lena's hands trembled as she processed this. Adrian had been shot by someone he trusted, someone in his own family, and he'd spent 5 years unable to speak, unable to warn anyone, unable to protect himself. I won't tell anyone you're waking up, she promised. Not until we know it's safe. Not until you're strong enough to protect yourself. Thankyu. The words took 10 minutes to spell. When they were finished, Adrian's finger went completely still, his energy spent. Sleep, Lena whispered, smoothing his hair back. I'll keep you safe. As weeks passed, Adrian's responses grew stronger. The finger twitches became more controlled. His eyelids began to flutter occasionally, though never when anyone but Lena was watching. He was fighting his way back to consciousness, inch by painful inch, and Lena fell deeper in love with every small victory. She loved his determination, pushing himself to communicate even when exhausted. She loved his protective instinct, warning her about danger even when he was the vulnerable one. She loved learning his mind through painstaking conversation, his thoughts on justice, his disgust with his family's business, his guilt over the people he'd hurt before the attack. Wasntgoodman, he spelled one evening. You're a good man now, Lena said firmly. That's what matters. Notyurhusband. Her heart clenched. I know. Sorry. Don't be. None of this is your fault. Wish. He stopped, too exhausted to continue. Wish what? Lena prompted gently, but Adrian had slipped into sleep, the word unfinished between them. Lena sat in the darkness, holding his hand, wondering what he'd been trying to say. Wish he'd never been shot? Wish she wasn't trapped here? Wish they'd met another way? I wish that too, she whispered to his sleeping form. Whatever it is, I wish it too. 3 months into her strange marriage, Lena realized she'd stopped thinking about escape, stopped counting the days until the contract expired, stopped imagining a life outside these walls. Adrian had become her world, not the mansion, not the money, not even her freedom. Just this man who was fighting his way back to life one finger, twitch at a time. And when he finally opened his eyes and looked at her, really looked at her, would he see the woman who'd cared for him? Or would he see the stranger his father had forced him to marry? Lena didn't know, but she knew with absolute certainty that she would stay by his side until he was strong enough to make that choice himself, even if it destroyed her, even if he chose to walk away. Because that was what love meant. Not possession, not obligation, just the fierce determination to see someone whole, no matter the cost to yourself. The night Adrian's eyes opened, Lena was reading poetry again. Neruda, the worn collection she'd found on his shelf with his careful annotations filling the margins. She'd just finished a passage about love being so short and forgetting so long when she felt his hand move in hers. Not the subtle finger twitches she'd grown accustomed to, but a full, deliberate squeeze, her breath caught. Adrian? His eyelids fluttered, once, twice, then slowly, impossibly, they opened. For 5 years, Lena had wondered what color his eyes were. Now she knew. Gray, storm gray, like smoke over water, and focused directly on her face with an intensity that made her heart stop. Oh my God, she whispered, frozen between terror and joy. You're awake, you're actually… Adrian's hand tightened around hers. His lips moved, trying to form words, but no sound came out. His throat, unused for so long, couldn't produce more than a rough exhale. Don't try to talk, Lena said, her training kicking in even as her emotions threatened to overwhelm her. Your vocal cords need time. Just breathe. You're safe. You're going to be okay. But Adrian's eyes held hers with desperate urgency. His free hand moved slowly, painfully toward her face. His fingers brushed her cheek, and Lena realized she was crying. "I know," she said, understanding without words what he was trying to communicate. "I know you're confused. I know this is terrifying, but I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." His eyes searched hers for a long moment. Then, with visible effort, he mouthed a single word. "Who?" "My name is Lena," she said softly. "Lena Carter. I'm your—" She hesitated, the word wife catching in her throat like broken glass. "I'm your nurse. I've been taking care of you." Something flickered in Adrian's expression. Recognition, maybe, from all those weeks of one-sided conversation. His lips moved again, forming another word. "How long?" "5 years," Lena said gently. "You were shot. You've been in a coma for 5 years." The information hit him like a physical blow. His eyes widened, his breathing quickened, monitors beginning to alarm as his heart rate spiked. Lena squeezed his hand. "I need you to stay calm," she said, her voice steady and professional even as her own pulse raced. "I know it's a shock. I know you have questions, but right now your body is weak. You need to breathe slowly. Can you do that for me?" Adrian stared at her for another moment, then nodded fractionally. He closed his eyes, his chest rising and falling as he fought to control his breathing. Lena watched the monitors, relief flooding through her as his vitals gradually stabilized. "Good," she said. "That's good. Just keep breathing." When Adrian opened his eyes again, they held a different question. His gaze moved to their joined hands, then back to her face. The question was clear even without words. Lena's heart hammered. She had to tell him. He deserved to know the truth. But how did you explain to a man that his father had married him off without consent while he lay helpless? "There's something I need to tell you," she began carefully. "Something that happened while you were unconscious. Your father—" The door burst open. Victor Vale stood in the doorway, his expression transforming from surprise to fierce triumph in the space of a heartbeat. "Adrian?" Adrian's hand went rigid in Lena's grip. His entire body tensed, his eyes fixed on his father with an expression Lena couldn't read. Recognition, certainly, but something darker underneath. "Leave us," Victor commanded Lena without looking at her. "He just woke up," Lena protested. "He needs—" "I said leave." Victor's voice was granite. "Now." Adrian's hand squeezed hers again, urgent and desperate. "Don't go," the pressure seemed to say. But what choice did she have? Victor owned this house, owned her contract, owned everything, including the man lying in this bed. "I'll be right outside," Lena promised Adrian quietly, pulling her hand free despite his silent protest. "If you need me, I'll hear you." She walked to the connecting door on shaking legs, but she didn't close it completely. Through the crack, she could see Victor approaching his son's bedside. 5 years, Victor said, his voice rough with emotion Lena had never heard from him before. 5 years I've waited for this moment. Adrian's lips moved. Even from the doorway, Lena could read the word, "Why? Why did I keep you alive?" Victor pulled up the chair Lena had occupied for months. "Because you're my son. Because I don't give up what's mine. Because the people who did this to you needed to believe you were helpless while I hunted them down." Adrian's expression hardened. His hand moved slowly, pointing at his father, then at himself. An accusation. "Yes," Victor said, understanding. "I married you while you were unconscious. To a nurse. To protect your inheritance from your cousins, who've been circling like vultures waiting for me to pull the plug." Lena watched Adrian's face contort with rage. His hand slammed weakly against the bed rail, the most violent movement his damaged body could manage. His mouth opened, forcing sound through his damaged vocal cords. What emerged was barely a whisper, rough as gravel, but unmistakably furious. "No!" "Right. I had every right," Victor countered coldly. "You were dying. Your cousins were filing legal motions to have you declared dead. The marriage was the only way to protect what's yours. Not yours to decide." The words came out broken and painful, but the fury behind them was clear. Adrian tried to sit up, his muscles trembling with effort and weakness. He made it perhaps 6 inches before collapsing back, breathing hard. "Don't be a fool," Victor snapped. "You were unconscious. Someone had to make decisions." "Not that decision." Lena's chest tightened. She'd known Adrian would be angry when he found out. She'd prepared herself for his rage. But hearing the betrayal in his broken voice, seeing the way he looked at his father like an enemy, it cut deeper than she'd expected. "The girl is irrelevant," Victor said dismissively. "A means to an end. When you're strong enough, we'll dissolve the marriage. She'll take her payment and disappear. What matters is that you're awake. You're alive. And we can finally deal with the traitors in our family." "Who?" Adrian rasped. "I don't know yet, but they made a mistake keeping you alive, because now you can tell me who pulled the trigger." Adrian's expression shifted, something dark and haunted replacing the anger. He turned his head away, staring at the ceiling. "I don't remember." "You don't remember the attack? Remember the meeting? Then nothing. Woke up. Now..." Victor's jaw clenched. "Nothing? No faces? No voices?" "Nothing." For a long moment, Victor sat in silence. Then he stood abruptly. "We'll discuss this later. You need rest. I'll send Dr. Reeves to examine you." He strode toward the door, nearly colliding with Lena. His eyes narrowed when he saw her standing there. "How long were you listening?" "Long enough," Lena said, lifting her chin. "He needs medical attention. His vitals are unstable, his throat is damaged from intubation, and he's severely weak. Whatever interrogation you're planning can wait until he's stronger." Victor studied her for a moment. Then something like approval crossed his features. "Fine. You have 24 hours to stabilize him. Then I want answers." He left without another word. Lena returned to Adrian's room to find him still staring at the ceiling, his expression hollow. She approached slowly, giving him time to acknowledge her presence. "I'm going to examine you now," she said softly. "Is that okay?" Adrian's eyes shifted to her face. For a moment she thought he might refuse. Then he nodded once, barely perceptible. Lena worked quickly and efficiently, checking his vitals, testing his reflexes, assessing the damage 5 years of immobility had caused. His muscle tone was better than expected, evidence of the countless hours she'd spent on range of motion exercises. His cardiovascular system was stable, but his throat showed signs of damage, and his limbs trembled with weakness. "You're doing remarkably well, considering," she said, making notes on her tablet. "But you need to take things slowly. Your body has been through tremendous trauma." Adrian watched her work, his gray eyes tracking her every movement. When she finished, he caught her wrist, his grip weak but deliberate. "The marriage," he rasped. "True?" Lena's heart sank. "Yes. I'm sorry. I know you didn't consent. I know this is... Why, you? My father needed a heart transplant. Your father offered to pay for it in exchange for..." She couldn't finish the sentence. "For marrying a stranger." Adrian's voice was bitter and broken. "He bought you." "Yes." "And you agreed." It wasn't a question, but Lena answered anyway. "I didn't have a choice. My father was dying. I would have done anything to save him." Adrian's grip on her wrist loosened. He looked at her with something that might have been understanding or might have been disgust. Lena couldn't tell. "You were caring for me all this time?" "Yes." "The reading, the talking, that was you." You heard it?" Lena's breath caught. "All of it?" "Not at first, but later." "Yes." Shame flooded through her. All those nights she'd poured her heart out, thinking he couldn't hear. All those confessions, those moments of desperate loneliness. He'd been aware for how long? "How long have you been conscious?" she asked. "Weeks, maybe 2 months. Hard to track. Time, 2 months." He'd been aware for 2 months while she'd fallen in love with what she thought was a ghost. "I'm sorry," Lena said, her voice cracking. "I'm so sorry you had to hear everything. I thought you couldn't. I didn't mean to burden you with..." "You kept me alive," Adrian interrupted, his voice rough but definite. "My cousins. The guard. You protected me." "I told you I would." "Why?" His eyes searched hers. "You don't know me, owe me nothing. Why protect me?" "Because I love you," Lena thought, but couldn't say. Because somewhere between the caregiving and the one-sided conversations, you stopped being a patient and became the most important person in my world. Because it was the right thing to do, she said instead. Adrian stared at her for a long moment. Then, impossibly, the corner of his mouth lifted in what might have been the ghost of a smile. Terrible. Liar. Before Lena could respond, the door opened and Dr. Reeves entered, his usual composure shattered by obvious shock. "Mr. Vale, this is extraordinary." He rushed to the bedside, already pulling out his medical equipment. "I need to run a full neurological assessment. Mrs. Vale, please document everything." The next hour was a blur of examinations and tests. Dr. Reeves was thorough to the point of obsession, checking every reflex, every response, muttering medical terminology under his breath. Adrian endured it with visible exhaustion, his eyes growing heavier with each passing minute. "Remarkable," Dr. Reeves finally declared. "Truly remarkable. Full consciousness, no apparent cognitive deficits, motor control returning though severely weakened. Mr. Vale, you've made medical history." "Fantastic," Adrian rasped, his sarcasm evident even through his damaged voice. "When can I leave this bed?" "Not for some time, I'm afraid. We'll need extensive physical therapy, continued monitoring, gradual reintroduction to solid foods." "How long?" Dr. Reeves hesitated. "Months, minimum. Your body has atrophied significantly. Walking, talking normally, regaining full motor control, it's going to be a long road." Adrian's jaw clenched, but he nodded. "And my memory of the attack." Memory loss following traumatic brain injury is common. It may return with time, or it may not. There's no way to predict. Dr. Reeves made notes on his tablet. "For now, rest is your priority. Mrs. Vale will continue your care regimen. I'll return tomorrow to begin physical therapy protocols." He left with a final warning to keep Adrian calm and rested, as if calm was possible after waking up to discover you'd lost 5 years and gained an unwanted wife. Alone again, Lena prepared Adrian's evening medication. He watched her with wary attention, his body tense despite obvious exhaustion. "I'm not going to hurt you," she said quietly, approaching with the syringe. "This is just antibiotics and nutrients. The same medication I've been giving you for months." "How do I know what you've been giving me?" The suspicion in his voice stung, but Lena understood it. "You don't. You'll have to trust me." She held up the medication log. "But if you want, you can verify everything with Dr. Reeves. Every medication, every dosage, it's all documented." Adrian studied her face for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Proceed." Lena administered the medication, her hand steady despite the emotional chaos inside her. When she finished, she stepped back, giving him space. "You should sleep," she said. "Your body needs rest to heal." "Can't sleep." Adrian's eyes held hers. "Every time I close them, I'm back, in the dark, alone." The vulnerability in his admission broke something in Lena. She pulled the chair close to his bedside and sat down. "You're not alone anymore," she said softly. "I'm right here. I'll stay as long as you need me to." "Why?" The question again, more desperate this time. "Why do you care what happens to me?" "Because you're brave and brilliant and broken, and I've spent 3 months learning your heart through the books you loved and the notes you wrote, and the way you fought to come back to a world that betrayed you." "Because everyone deserves someone in their corner," Lena said instead. "Even if that someone is a stranger their father bought." Adrian's expression softened fractionally. "You resent the marriage, don't you?" "Yes." No hesitation. "But not you. Just the situation." "I understand." "Do you?" Adrian's eyes searched hers. "You lost your freedom for this, for me." "I lost my freedom for my father. You were just part of the deal." "Honest," Adrian murmured. "I appreciate that." Silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable, but heavy with things unsaid. Lena watched Adrian's eyes growing heavier, his body finally surrendering to exhaustion. "The poetry," he said suddenly, fighting sleep. "You read Neruda tonight." Yes, it was one of your favorites, I thought. It was. His eyes closed. Read it. Again. Please. Lena picked up the worn book, finding the marked page. Her voice was soft in the quiet room as she read about love and memory, about the persistence of feeling even through darkness. When she finished the passage, Adrian was asleep, his breathing deep and even. She sat beside him through the night, keeping vigil like she had for months. But now everything was different. Now the man in the bed could wake and speak and question her presence. Now the comfortable one-sided relationship they'd built was shattered, replaced by the complicated reality of two strangers bound together by contract and circumstance. And somewhere beneath her fear and uncertainty, Lena felt a spark of hope. Because Adrian was alive. He was fighting, and maybe, just maybe, they could find a way forward together. The next 3 days were chaos. Word of Adrian's awakening spread through the mansion like wildfire. Suddenly, Lena's carefully controlled environment was invaded by doctors, physical therapists, and family members she'd never met. Victor was a constant presence, interrogating his son about the attack, about potential enemies, about business dealings from 5 years ago. Adrian answered what he could, but his memory of the incident remained frustratingly blank. I've told you, he said, his voice growing stronger each day but still rough. I remember the meeting. I remember walking into the warehouse. Then nothing, until I woke up 3 days ago. Convenient, Marcus said from his position against the wall. He'd been present for every interrogation, his sharp eyes missing nothing. The one thing you can't remember is who shot you. You think I'm lying? Adrian's voice was ice. I think memory loss is a convenient excuse when you don't want to answer uncomfortable questions. Enough, Victor snapped. Adrian has no reason to protect whoever did this. Doesn't he? Veronica appeared in the doorway, perfectly coiffed as always. Maybe the attack wasn't what we thought. Maybe it was personal, not business. Adrian's expression went carefully blank. Meaning? Meaning you had enemies, cousin. People who thought you were too ambitious, too ruthless. People who wanted you out of the way. Are you confessing? Adrian asked mildly. Veronica's smile was sharp. I'm observing, nothing more. The tension in the room was suffocating. Lena, relegated to the corner during family meetings, watched the dynamics with growing alarm. The cousins circled Adrian like sharks, their questions seemingly supportive but edged with threat. Victor defended his son aggressively, but there was calculation in his protection. And Adrian himself sat in the hospital bed like a king on a throne, weak but unbowed, parrying attacks with verbal precision. This is exhausting him, Lena finally interjected. He needs rest. The nurse speaks, Isabel said mockingly. How sweet. She thinks she has authority here. She's right, Adrian said before Lena could respond. I'm tired. This conversation is over. We're not finished, Marcus protested. Yes, we are. Adrian's voice carried command despite its roughness. Leave. All of you, except Lena. The cousins exchanged glances. Victor's eyes narrowed, but after a moment he nodded. Very well, rest. We'll continue tomorrow. The room emptied slowly, each family member casting backward glances filled with suspicion and calculation. When the door finally closed, Adrian slumped back against his pillows, exhaustion written across his features. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For being the only person in this house who isn't trying to manipulate me. He opened his eyes, meeting hers. Or are you? No, Lena said firmly. I'm just trying to keep you alive and healthy. That's all I've ever tried to do. Adrian studied her face. I believe you, which is either very foolish or very wise of me. Probably foolish. The corner of his mouth lifted, that ghost of a smile that made Lena's heart skip. Probably. Over the following days, a routine developed. Mornings were for physical therapy, painful, frustrating sessions where Adrian pushed his weakened body to relearn basic movements. Lena assisted, supporting his weight as he tried to stand, holding his arms as he attempted to walk. The intimacy of it was both familiar and strange. She'd touched him countless times while he was unconscious, but now every contact carried weight. Again, Adrian gritted out, his legs shaking as he tried to support his own weight. You've been standing for 10 minutes, Lena said. That's enough for today. No, again. Adrian, you'll hurt yourself. I said again. His voice was sharp with frustration. I won't be helpless. I won't lie in that bed while people plot around me. So we're going again. Lena wanted to argue, but she recognized the steel in his voice. She'd heard it before, in those weeks when he was fighting his way back to consciousness through sheer force of will. Fine, but if you collapse, I'm telling Dr. Reeves to sedate you for a week. Fair. They worked until Adrian's legs gave out, and Lena had to catch him, both of them ending up on the floor in a tangle of limbs and heavy breathing. I hate this, Adrian said quietly, his head against her shoulder. Being weak, being dependent. You won't be forever. You're getting stronger every day. Not fast enough. His voice was bitter. My cousins are circling. My father is planning something he hasn't told me about, and I'm so weak I can't even stand for more than a few minutes. So we keep working. Every day we push a little harder, until you're strong enough to face them. Lena helped him back into the wheelchair they'd started using. You survived being shot 3 times. You survived 5 years in a coma. You can survive this. Adrian looked at her, something unreadable in his expression. You have a lot of faith in me for someone who's only known me conscious for a few days. I've known you for 3 months, Lena corrected. Maybe you were unconscious, but I still learned who you are. Through your books, your letters, the way you fought to wake up. You're not the stranger you think you are to me. And what did you learn? His voice was quiet, curious rather than challenging. That you're brilliant and stubborn. That you question everything, including yourself. That you are trying to be better than your family's legacy. That you hate injustice but struggle with mercy. That you're lonely even when surrounded by people. Lena met his gaze. That you're worth saving. Adrian's breath caught. For a long moment they sat in silence, the weight of her confession hanging between them. The annulment, he finally said. My father mentioned it. Dissolving the marriage when I'm stronger. Yes? Lena kept her voice neutral despite the pain lancing through her chest. Is that what you want? Was it? A month ago she would have said yes without hesitation. Freedom, money, her life back. But now, sitting beside the man she'd fallen in love with, the man who was finally real and present and looking at her like she mattered. What I want is irrelevant, she said carefully. The marriage was never real. It was a business arrangement. When it served its purpose, it ends. That was always the deal. You didn't answer the question. Neither did you. Adrian's lips twitched. Evasive. I like it. He wheeled himself toward the window, looking out at grounds he hadn't seen in 5 years. My father thinks you're irrelevant, a means to an end. Is that how you see yourself? I don't know how to answer that. Honestly would be a start. Lena took a breath. I see myself as someone who made an impossible choice and ended up somewhere I never expected. I don't regret saving my father, but I don't pretend this situation is anything other than what it is. Which is? Complicated. Adrian laughed, the sound rough but genuine. That's one word for it. He turned back to face her. You could have told me to leave you alone when I woke up. Could have demanded my father send in different nurses. But you stayed. Why? Because you asked me to. And you always do what people ask? No. But I do what I promise. Lena moved to stand beside him at the window. I promised I'd keep you safe. I promised I'd help you recover. Those promises still stand, whether you're unconscious or awake. Adrian's hand found hers, his fingers interlacing with hers in a gesture that felt both familiar and entirely new. Then I'm asking you to make another promise, he said quietly. What? Don't let them separate us. Not yet. His eyes met hers, vulnerable and determined. I don't trust anyone in this house except you. And until I'm strong enough to protect myself, until I know who tried to kill me, I need you beside me. Adrian, I know what I'm asking. I know it's selfish, but please. His grip tightened. Stay. Lena's heart broke and soared simultaneously. He needed her. Maybe not the way she wanted, maybe only as protection rather than as something more, but he was choosing her, trusting her, when trust seemed like the most dangerous thing he could offer anyone. "I'll stay," she promised, "for as long as you need me." Relief flooded his expression. "Thank you. But Adrian, there's something you should know." The door burst open. Victor stormed in, his face dark with rage, Malcolm Gray close behind, looking uncharacteristically shaken. "We have a problem," Victor said without preamble. "Someone leaked information about your awakening to the press. It'll be all over the news by tonight." Adrian's expression hardened. "How?" "I don't know. But whoever did it wanted the world to know you're awake and vulnerable." Victor's gaze swept to Lena. "Leave us." "She stays," Adrian said flatly. "This is family business." "She's my wife. She stays." The word wife, spoken with such casual authority, sent shock through the room. Lena's breath caught. Victor's eyes narrowed. "A temporary arrangement," Victor corrected coldly. "Is it?" Adrian's voice was steel. "Because from where I'm sitting, that marriage certificate is the only thing keeping me alive. So perhaps we should reconsider how temporary it needs to be." The silence was deafening. Then Victor smiled, slow and satisfied. "Well," he said, "perhaps you're finally thinking like a Vale." Lena's heart was still hammering from Adrian's declaration when Victor's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his expression darkening further. "They're already at the gates," he said. "Reporters. Dozens of them." Malcolm stepped forward, tablet in hand. "The story broke 20 minutes ago. Crime heir Adrian Vale awakens after 5 years. They're calling it a miracle. Speculation is already running wild about the circumstances of the shooting." "Let me guess," Adrian said, his voice tight. "My loving cousins are expressing their joy at my recovery." "Veronica gave a statement 10 minutes ago," Malcolm confirmed. "She said the family is thrilled and looking forward to Adrian resuming his rightful place in the organization." "Which means she's terrified," Adrian observed. "Good." "This changes everything," Victor said, pacing like a caged predator. "As long as the world thought you were unconscious, you were protected by sympathy and obscurity. Now you're a target again. Whoever tried to kill you 5 years ago will know their window is closing." "Then we move faster." Adrian wheeled himself closer to his father. "You've had 5 years to investigate. Tell me what you found." Victor exchanged a glance with Malcolm. "We've narrowed it down to 3 possibilities. Marcus had the most to gain from your death. With you gone, he was next in line for control. Veronica had access to your schedule that day. And," he paused, jaw clenching, "your business partner, James Keller, disappeared 2 weeks after the shooting. We never found him." "James?" Adrian's voice carried genuine shock. "That's impossible. We were friends since college." "Friends betray each other for the right price," Victor said coldly. "Or the right threat. We don't know which it was." "Have you found him?" "No, he's either dead or very good at hiding." Victor stopped pacing, fixing his son with an intense stare. "Which is why we need to flush out whoever's behind this, and the leak to the press gives us an opportunity." "What kind of opportunity?" Lena asked, though dread pooled in her stomach. Victor's smile was predatory. "We use Adrian's recovery to draw them out, make them desperate enough to make a mistake." "You want to use him as bait," Lena said flatly. "I want to end this." Victor's gaze shifted to her. "Which is why you're more important now than ever, Mrs. Vale. The world needs to believe this marriage is real, that Adrian has someone he trusts absolutely, someone who'll be with him every moment, making it harder for enemies to strike." "We're going public with the marriage?" Adrian asked. "We're going to make it look like a love story," Victor said. "The devoted nurse who cared for you through your coma. The woman you married before the attack." "That's a lie," Lena interrupted. "The marriage was 3 months ago." "The legal paperwork says otherwise," Malcolm interjected smoothly. "We backdated everything to make the marriage appear legitimate. As far as public record shows, you and Adrian married 6 years ago, shortly before the attack." Lena felt like the ground was shifting beneath her. "You falsified documents?" "We protected Adrian's interests," Victor corrected. "And now that protection extends to you. As of this moment, you're not just his nurse. You're his wife in every public way, which means you don't leave his side. You don't speak to press without approval, and you play the part convincingly." And if I refuse? Lena's voice was steady despite her racing heart. Then whoever leaked this information will know the marriage is a sham. They'll know Adrian is vulnerable, and they'll strike before we can identify them. Victor's expression was granite. Your choice, Mrs. Vale. Play the devoted wife or paint a target on both your backs. Lena looked at Adrian, trying to read his expression. He sat rigid in his wheelchair, his gray eyes locked on hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. It's not fair to ask this of you, he said quietly. I know you didn't sign up for any of this. I signed up to protect you, Lena replied. If this is what that takes, then fine. But I won't lie to the press without knowing the full truth. Who do you really think tried to kill you? Adrian was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to his father. Leave us, both of you. Adrian? Victor began. I said leave. There was command in Adrian's voice that Lena had never heard before, the voice of someone born to lead, to be obeyed. I'll discuss this with my wife, privately. Victor's jaw clenched, but after a moment he nodded. You have 1 hour. Then we need decisions. The door closed behind them, leaving Lena and Adrian alone in the sudden quiet. You didn't have to do that, Lena said. Yes, I did. Adrian rubbed his face, exhaustion evident in every line of his body. Because my father is right about one thing. Whoever did this will come for me again, and I won't let you walk into danger blind. He wheeled to his bedside table and pulled out a locked drawer. His hands shook slightly as he entered the combination. Muscle memory from before the attack, Lena realized. Inside was a slim folder. I've been piecing together my memories, Adrian said, opening the folder to reveal notes in shaky handwriting. Not of the attack itself, but of the weeks before. The meetings, the deals, the tensions. Lena pulled up a chair. What did you remember? That I was planning to leave. The admission came quietly. I was going to walk away from the family business, from all of it. Why? Because I finally saw it clearly. What we do. What we are. Adrian's expression was haunted. We call it business, but it's exploitation dressed in expensive suits. Money laundering, extortion, worse things I don't even want to name. And I was part of it. I told myself I could change it from the inside, make it better, more legitimate. But that was a lie I told myself to sleep at night. So you decided to leave, Lena said softly. I told 3 people. My father, who was furious, but said he'd accept my decision eventually. My partner James, who I thought would support me. And he paused, pain flickering across his face. My girlfriend at the time, Elena Cortez. Lena's stomach twisted. She'd known intellectually that Adrian had a life before the attack, but hearing about a girlfriend made it visceral. What happened to her? She left 2 months after the shooting, sent a letter saying she couldn't watch me die slowly. My father showed it to me yesterday. Adrian's voice was hollow. I don't blame her. 5 years is a long time to mourn someone who won't die or wake up. Do you think she was involved in the attack? Elena? Adrian shook his head. No, she loved me. I'm sure of that. But James? His hands clenched on the folder. James stood to lose everything if I left. We were partners. Our business was built on my family name and his connections. Without me, he had nothing. So you think he set you up? I think he's the most likely candidate, but I can't prove it. And without proof, accusing him is just paranoia. Adrian looked at her directly. Which is why my father's plan, as manipulative as it is, might be our best option. If we convince the world our marriage is real, if we make me look protected and strong, it might force whoever's responsible to make a move. Or it might just paint a bigger target on both of us. Yes. Adrian didn't look away. Which is why I'm asking, not telling. You've already given up so much for this. I won't ask you to risk your life too. Lena thought about the past 3 months. The isolation, the fear, the slow transformation from nurse to guardian to something she still couldn't name. She thought about Adrian fighting his way back to consciousness, about his finger twitches spelling out warnings, about the way his hand felt in hers. I told you I'd stay as long as you needed me, she said finally. That hasn't changed. Relief flooded Adrian's expression. Thank you. But I have conditions. His eyebrows rose. Such as? No more secrets. If we're doing this, if we're pretending to be a real couple, I need to know everything, your history, your enemies, your plans, all of it. Agreed. And when this is over, when we've identified whoever tried to kill you, we dissolve the marriage. Clean break, no strings. The words hurt to say, but they needed to be said. Something flickered in Adrian's eyes, disappointment maybe, or relief. If that's what you want, that's what we agreed to. That's what this has always been. Right. Adrian's voice was carefully neutral. A business arrangement. The words hung between them, heavy with things unsaid. Lena wanted to take them back, wanted to tell him that somewhere along the way, this had stopped being business for her. But what good would that do? He was planning for their divorce before they'd even pretended to be married. He saw her as protection, as an ally, maybe even as a friend. But love? That was something neither of them could afford. We should tell your father we've agreed, Lena said, standing. Adrian caught her hand. Lena, before we do this, before we step into that performance, I need you to know something. What? That I'm grateful, not just for your protection or your care, but for seeing me as more than just a body in a bed, for talking to me all those weeks like I was still a person. His grip tightened. You gave me a reason to fight my way back. I won't forget that. Lena's throat closed. Adrian, I know, business arrangement. Clean break when it's over. I understand the terms. He released her hand. But I wanted you to know anyway. Before Lena could respond, he'd already wheeled toward the door, calling for his father. The next 72 hours were a whirlwind of preparation and performance. Victor's publicity team descended on the mansion, coaching Lena on her backstory, her mannerisms, how to look at Adrian like she loved him. That part won't be hard, the lead publicist, a sharp woman named Monica, observed during one of their sessions. You already look at him like he hung the moon. Just don't overdo it. We want devoted wife, not obsessed stalker. The official story was simple and romantic. Lena and Adrian had met 4 years before the shooting when she'd treated him for a minor injury at the hospital. They'd fallen in love quickly, married quietly because of family complications, and Lena had been devastated when he was attacked just months into their marriage. She dedicated herself to his care, never giving up hope that he'd return to her. It's a beautiful story, Monica said with satisfaction. The press will eat it up, especially with the photos. She laid out a series of images on the table. Some were real, candid shots from the past weeks of Lena helping Adrian with physical therapy, reading to him, holding his hand. Others were staged, professional photos of them together, Adrian's arm around her shoulders, both of them smiling at the camera. When were these taken? Lena asked, picking up one of the staged photos. This morning, while you were sleeping, Monica said cheerfully. We have an excellent photographer, very discreet. You photographed us without permission? We photographed Mr. Vale's wife caring for him. Nothing inappropriate. Monica's smile was sharp. Everything we do is about controlling the narrative, Mrs. Vale. If we don't provide photos, the paparazzi will take their own, and those won't be flattering. Lena looked at Adrian, who'd been silent through most of the session. He sat in his wheelchair, his expression carefully neutral, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. It's fine, he said quietly. Monica's right. Better to control what they see. The first public appearance was scheduled for the following day, a brief press conference where Adrian would thank everyone for their support and introduce his wife. Victor had wanted something more elaborate, but Dr. Reeves had put his foot down. Mr. Vale is still recovering, 10 minutes maximum, seated the entire time with medical staff on standby. The doctor's tone brooked no argument. And Mrs. Vale stays with him. If he shows any signs of distress, the conference ends immediately. Understood, Victor said, though his expression suggested he found the restrictions irritating. That night, alone in Adrian's room after another grueling physical therapy session, Lena helped him back into bed. His strength was improving daily, but he was still weak, still vulnerable. The thought of parading him in front of cameras and reporters made her stomach churn. You don't have to do this, she said, checking his vitals. We could tell them you're not strong enough. And show weakness to whoever's hunting me? No. Adrian caught her hand as she adjusted his IV, but I'm glad you'll be there. Someone has to make sure you don't collapse on camera. Is that the only reason? His gray eyes held hers, searching for something. What other reason would there be? I don't know. You tell me. The air between them felt charged, dangerous. Lena pulled her hand back, busying herself with his medication chart. Your pain levels have decreased, she said, deliberately changing the subject. That's good progress. Lena. And your range of motion is improving. Dr. Reeves thinks you might be able to use a walker by next week. Lena. Adrian's voice was firmer now. Look at me. She did, reluctantly. The intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. When this is over, he said slowly, when we've caught whoever did this and dissolved the marriage like we agreed, what then? Then I take my payment and disappear, like your father planned. That's what you want? To disappear? What Lena wanted was to stay, to keep helping him recover, to see who he became when he was finally free of this nightmare, to find out if the connection between them was real or just a product of extreme circumstances. What I want is irrelevant, she said instead. We both know how this ends. Adrian stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Right, of course. The disappointment in his voice cut through her, but Lena forced herself to maintain the distance. Getting attached was dangerous. Hoping for more than the contract promised was foolish. She'd learned that lesson already. You should sleep, she said, dimming the lights. Tomorrow's going to be difficult. Will you stay? The question was quiet, almost vulnerable. Until I fall asleep? I always do. She settled into her familiar chair, watching as Adrian's eyes gradually closed. But unlike the past 3 months, tonight he watched her back, his gray eyes tracking her every movement until exhaustion finally claimed him. The press conference was a carefully orchestrated performance. Adrian sat in an expensive chair rather than his wheelchair, a concession to vanity that Lena had argued against but lost. She stood slightly behind him, one hand resting on his shoulder, playing the part of the devoted wife. Cameras flashed endlessly, reporters shouted questions, and Adrian handled it with the same command he'd shown with his father, his voice growing stronger as he spoke. I want to thank everyone for their support during my recovery, he said, his tone measured and calm. The past 5 years have been challenging for my family, but I'm grateful to be back. Mr. Vale, can you tell us about the circumstances of the attack? A reporter called out. The investigation is ongoing. I have full confidence it will be resolved. What about your marriage? Records show you married shortly before the shooting, but this is the first time your wife has been seen publicly. Adrian's hand came up to cover Lena's where it rested on his shoulder. The gesture looked natural, affectionate, but Lena could feel the tremor in his fingers. Exhaustion or emotion, she couldn't tell. My wife has been my constant support, Adrian said, looking up at her with an expression that seemed almost genuine. She never gave up on me, even when others did. I owe her everything. The words were scripted, practiced, but the way he looked at her felt real. Lena smiled down at him, hoping the cameras caught devotion rather than confusion. Mrs. Vale, how did you maintain hope for 5 years? Another reporter asked. This was Lena's cue. Monica had coached her extensively on this answer. I loved him, she said simply, letting emotion she didn't have to fake color her voice. That doesn't stop just because someone can't respond. Every day I hoped. And eventually, hope was enough. The reporters ate it up. Questions flew faster, more personal, more invasive. Lena felt Adrian's hand tighten on hers, felt the tension radiating through him. That's all the time we have, Malcolm announced, stepping forward. Mr. Vale needs to rest. Thank you all for coming. The moment they were backstage, away from the cameras, Adrian slumped. Lena caught him as his legs gave out, easing him back into the wheelchair. I'm fine, he said through gritted teeth, just tired. You pushed too hard. Lena checked his pulse, elevated, but not dangerously so. You're going straight to bed. In a moment, first, he looked up at her, vulnerability stark in his gray eyes. How did I do? Was it convincing? Very, Lena said softly. They believed every word. And you? Did you believe it? The question hung between them, weighted with meaning Lena wasn't sure she understood. Before she could answer, Victor appeared with Monica in tow. Excellent work, Victor said with satisfaction. The footage is already going viral. Devoted wife nurses crime heir back to life. It's perfect. Glad our pain is good publicity, Adrian said dryly. Your pain is leverage, Victor corrected, which we're going to use. Malcolm has already started reaching out to known enemies, letting them know you're recovering rapidly, that you're remembering more each day. But I'm not remembering, Adrian protested. They don't know that, and the uncertainty will make them nervous. Nervous people make mistakes. Victor's smile was predatory. Now we wait for someone to make a move. They didn't have to wait long. 2 days after the press conference, Malcolm burst into Adrian's room at 3 in the morning. Lena, dozing in her chair, jerked awake as the lights blazed on. "We have a problem," Malcolm said urgently. Adrian sat up in bed, instantly alert despite the early hour. "What happened?" "James Keller resurfaced. He called the house 20 minutes ago, asking to speak with you." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Adrian's expression went perfectly still, the way Lena had learned meant he was thinking fast and furious. "Where is he?" Adrian asked. "He wouldn't say, but he wants to meet. Tomorrow. Alone." "Absolutely not," Lena said immediately. "It's obviously a trap." "Probably," Adrian agreed, "but it's also an opportunity. If James is involved, meeting him might give us answers." "Or get you killed," Lena shot back. "You can barely walk. How are you supposed to defend yourself?" "I'll have security." "He said alone," Malcolm interrupted. "He was very specific. You and him, no one else, or the meeting doesn't happen." "Then the meeting doesn't happen," Lena said firmly. "This is insane. This is necessary." Adrian swung his legs out of bed, gripping the rail as he stood on shaking legs. "James was my best friend. If he's involved, I need to know why. I need to hear it from him. And if he shoots you again? Then we'll finally know for sure he was behind it." Adrian's voice was grim. "Either way, we get answers." "No." Lena moved between Adrian and Malcolm, her hands clenched. "I won't let you walk into an ambush. Not when you're still recovering. Not when—" She stopped, throat closing on words she couldn't say. Adrian's expression softened. He reached out, cupping her face in his hand, a gesture so gentle it made Lena's heart ache. "I know you're scared," he said quietly. "I'm scared too. But I've been running from this for 5 years. Even if I don't remember the attack, I remember the fear of always looking over my shoulder. I won't live like that anymore." "Then let me come with you," Lena pleaded. "I'm your wife. That's what the world believes. Let me be there. James will know you're new. He'll know it's a setup. So tell him the truth. Tell him your father forced you into the marriage for protection. Tell him you don't trust me." The words hurt to say, but desperation overrode pride. "Just don't go alone." Adrian searched her face for a long moment. Then he looked at Malcolm. "Set up the meeting. Lena comes with me. James can like it or not." Malcolm looked like he wanted to argue, but after a moment, he nodded. "I'll make the arrangements." When he left, Lena helped Adrian back into bed, her hands shaking with residual fear and adrenaline. "You're angry with me," Adrian observed. "I'm terrified for you. There's a difference." "Is there?" His hand found hers, interlacing their fingers. "Lena, if something happens tomorrow, nothing's going to happen. But if it does, I need you to know something." Adrian's voice was serious, his gray eyes locked on hers. "These past weeks, getting to know you, trusting you, it's been the only real thing in my life. Everything else is performance and manipulation and strategy. But you—" He paused, seeming to struggle for words. "You're real, and I'm grateful for that." Lena's heart hammered. "Adrian." "I know. Business arrangement. Clean break, I remember." His smile was sad. "But I wanted you to know anyway, just in case." He fell asleep still holding her hand, leaving Lena to stare into the darkness and wonder when exactly she'd lost the ability to protect her heart from the man she was supposed to be protecting. The meeting was set for a warehouse on the outskirts of the city, neutral territory, Malcolm explained, with multiple exits and clear sightlines. Adrian insisted on wearing a bulletproof vest under his shirt, and Lena wore one too, though the weight of it did nothing to ease her anxiety. Victor had wanted to send a security team despite James's conditions, but Adrian had refused. "If we want him to talk, we have to show some trust." "Trust is what got you shot the first time," Victor growled, but he'd relented. Now, sitting in the back of the sedan with Adrian as they drove toward the warehouse, Lena couldn't shake the feeling they were making a terrible mistake. "It's not too late to turn back," she said quietly. "Yes, it is." Adrian's hand found hers in the darkness. This ends today, one way or another. The warehouse was exactly as bleak as Lena had imagined. Crumbling brick, broken windows, the kind of place where bad things happened and no one heard the screams. The sedan stopped at the entrance, and Malcolm turned from the driver's seat. "I'll be monitoring from here. First sign of trouble, I'm calling in the team." "Understood." Adrian opened the door, his movements still stiff but stronger than they'd been even a week ago. Lena followed, her heart in her throat. Inside, the warehouse was cavernous and dark, light filtering through gaps in the roof. And in the center, illuminated by a shaft of sunlight, stood a man Lena had never seen but recognized instantly from photos. James Keller looked older than his 35 years, his face gaunt and haunted. When he saw Adrian, something broke in his expression, relief and pain and guilt, all tangled together. "Adrian," he said, his voice cracking, "you're really awake." "I'm really awake," Adrian confirmed, his voice carefully neutral. "Hello, James." For a moment, neither man moved, then James laughed, the sound brittle and wrong. "I thought I'd killed you," he said. "I've spent 5 years thinking I'd killed my best friend." The confession hung in the air like smoke. Lena's hand went to the gun Malcolm had given her. Insurance, he'd called it. But Adrian stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "Tell me why," he said quietly. "Tell me why you did it." And James Keller, the man who'd shot Adrian Vale 3 times and left him for dead, began to cry. The sound of James Keller weeping in the empty warehouse was somehow worse than any confession. Lena's hand stayed on the gun, but she didn't draw it. Adrian stood perfectly still, his body tense, but his face carefully blank as he watched his former best friend break apart. "They had my sister," James finally choked out between sobs. "They took Emma, and they said if I didn't do it, they'd kill her. They'd make me watch." "Who?" Adrian's voice was quiet, deadly calm. "Who had Emma?" "Your cousins, Marcus and Veronica." James wiped his face with shaking hands. "They came to me 6 months before the attack, said they knew about your plans to leave, said they couldn't let that happen. The family business would collapse without you, and they'd lose everything. So they decided to kill me instead. They said it would be quick, painless, that you wouldn't suffer." James laughed bitterly. "They lied about that too. I shot you 3 times and you still wouldn't die. You just kept looking at me with those eyes, like you couldn't believe I'd—" His voice broke again. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Adrian swayed slightly, and Lena immediately moved to his side, supporting his weight. She could feel the tremor running through him, could see the careful control fracturing. "Where's Emma now?" Adrian asked, his voice rough. "Dead." The word was flat, emotionless. "They killed her anyway, 2 weeks after the shooting. Made it look like a car accident. I've been running ever since, trying to find proof, trying to find a way to make them pay without getting myself killed, too." "And the meeting today? When I heard you were awake, I thought—" James finally looked directly at Adrian, his eyes red and hollow. "I thought maybe you'd remember. Maybe you could testify against them. Maybe Emma's death wouldn't be for nothing." "I don't remember the attack," Adrian said. "My memory of that day is gone." James's face crumpled. "Then it was all for nothing. Emma died for nothing. I destroyed my best friend for nothing." "Not nothing." Adrian's voice hardened. "You just gave me everything I need to destroy them." He pulled out his phone, and Lena realized with a shock that it had been recording the entire conversation. James stared at the device, understanding dawning. "You recorded me?" "I recorded your confession, which includes naming Marcus and Veronica as the architects of an attempted murder." Adrian's smile was sharp and cold. "That's not nothing, James. That's justice. They'll kill me the moment they know I talked. Then you'll need protection, witness protection, federal custody, whatever it takes." Adrian's grip tightened on Lena's arm, the only sign of how much this was costing him. "But first, you're going to tell me everything. Every conversation, every threat, every detail about how they planned this, and then you're going to testify." "Adrian, you shot me 3 times and let me rot in a coma for 5 years while my father married me off like a piece of property and my cousins plotted to finish the job." Adrian's voice was ice and fury. "You owe me this, James. You owe Emma this. So start talking." What followed was 2 hours of painful testimony. James described how Marcus had approached him first, charming and persuasive, explaining how Adrian's departure would ruin the family. How Veronica had been the one to actually arrange Emma's kidnapping, using connections from her mother's side of the family. How they'd provided the gun, the location, the exact timing when security would be minimal. "They thought you'd die immediately," James said, his voice hollow. "When you survived the shooting, they panicked. Marcus wanted to finish you in the hospital, but your father locked down security too tight, so they waited. Figured you'd die eventually, or your father would give up." "But he didn't," Lena said quietly. "No. Victor Vale doesn't give up on anything he considers his." James looked at her directly for the first time. "Who are you? I know you're not Elena." "I'm his wife," Lena said, the lie coming easier now. "The real one." Something like relief crossed James's face. "Good. Elena left him. She didn't deserve him anyway." He turned back to Adrian. "What happens now?" "Now we give this recording to the FBI." Adrian's voice was steady, despite the exhaustion Lena could feel radiating from him. "And then we end this." Malcolm was already on the phone when they returned to the car, coordinating with federal agents who'd apparently been waiting on standby. Lena helped Adrian into the back seat, watching his face carefully. He'd held himself together through James's confession, through the brutal details of betrayal and murder. But now, in the privacy of the car, she could see the cracks forming. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. "No." Adrian leaned his head back against the seat, eyes closed. "My best friend tried to kill me on my cousin's orders. My girlfriend abandoned me. My father used my coma to play power games. Nothing about this is okay. But it's over. You have proof now. They can't hurt you anymore. Can't they?" Adrian opened his eyes, looking at her with devastating clarity. "Marcus and Veronica aren't going to confess just because James did. They'll have lawyers, alibis, reasonable doubt, and even if we convict them, there are others in the family who think like they do, who see me as weak for wanting to leave. Then we make you strong enough that they don't matter." "We?" Adrian's lips quirked slightly. "I thought this was temporary. Clean break when it's over, remember?" Lena's heart clenched. In the chaos of the meeting, she'd forgotten they were still playing roles, still pretending their marriage meant something beyond legal protection. "Right," she said, looking away. "Of course." Adrian's hand found hers in the darkness. "Lena, we're here," Malcolm announced, pulling up to a nondescript building. "FBI field office. They're ready for us." The next 72 hours were a blur of statements, interviews, and legal proceedings that Lena barely understood. Adrian testified for hours, his voice steady as he described the family dynamics, the business operations, everything he knew about Marcus and Veronica's positions and capabilities. James corroborated every detail, his confession damning and comprehensive. The arrests happened at dawn on the third day. Federal agents descended on the Vale mansion simultaneously, taking Marcus and Veronica into custody, while Victor watched with an expression that might have been satisfaction or might have been grief. Lena couldn't tell. "It's done," Victor said when Adrian and Lena returned to the mansion that afternoon. "They'll be charged with conspiracy to commit murder, kidnapping, and about a dozen other crimes. The evidence is overwhelming." "Good," Adrian said flatly. "There's more." Victor handed him a document. "Isabel confessed to leaking your awakening to the press. She wasn't involved in the shooting, but she hoped the publicity would force you into public view, make you vulnerable. She's cooperating with authorities in exchange for immunity." Adrian read the document without expression, then set it aside. "Fine. What about the family business?" "That's what I wanted to discuss with you." Victor sat behind his massive desk, looking older than Lena had ever seen him. "With Marcus and Veronica facing life sentences, their shares revert to you. Combined with what you already own, you'll control 60% of the company." "I don't want it," Adrian said immediately. "Adrian, I don't want it," he repeated, his voice firm. "I told you 5 years ago I was leaving. That hasn't changed just because someone shot me for it. And what will you do instead? You have no other training, no other skills. I have a law degree I never used because you pushed me into the business. I have investments of my own outside the family structure. And I have time to figure out who I want to be when I'm not living in your shadow." Adrian stood, swaying slightly. Lena immediately moved to support him. Sell my shares. Distribute them among the legitimate branches of the family. I'm done. Victor's expression hardened. You'd walk away from your birthright? I'd walk away from a legacy built on exploitation and violence. Yes. Adrian's gaze never wavered. You kept me alive, and I'm grateful for that, but I won't spend the rest of my life becoming you. For a long moment, father and son stared at each other. Then Victor nodded slowly. You're stronger than I gave you credit for, he said quietly. Your mother would have been proud. It was the first time Lena had heard him mention Adrian's mother. Adrian's expression flickered with surprise, then something softer. Thank you, he said. There's one more matter. Victor's gaze shifted to Lena. Your marriage. Now that the threat has been eliminated, I assume you'll want to proceed with the annulment. The word hit Lena like a physical blow. Of course. The contract. The deal. Everything they'd agreed to from the beginning. Yes, Adrian said, and Lena's heart shattered. I want to proceed with dissolving the marriage. I'll have Malcolm draw up the paperwork. Mrs. Vale, your settlement will be transferred within 48 hours. $2 million as promised, plus a bonus for your service during the investigation. You're free to go. Free. The word should have brought relief. Instead, it felt like a door slamming shut. I'll need a few days to pack, Lena heard herself say, and to arrange care for Adrian's continued physical therapy. That won't be necessary, Adrian interrupted, still not looking at her. I can hire professional staff. Professional staff. Not her. The message was clear. Of course, Lena said, fighting to keep her voice steady. Then I'll be out of your way by tomorrow. She left the office before either man could see her cry. That night, Lena packed her meager belongings with shaking hands. It was ridiculous to be this devastated. She'd known from the beginning this was temporary. She'd known Adrian saw her as protection, as a means to an end. She'd known falling in love with him was the stupidest thing she could possibly do. She'd done it anyway. Knock, knock. Lena turned to find Mrs. Chen standing in the doorway, her expression uncharacteristically gentle. I heard you're leaving, the housekeeper said. Tomorrow morning, as soon as possible. That's a shame. Mr. Adrian needs you. He has professional staff now. He doesn't need me. Mrs. Chen stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. I've worked for this family for 30 years. I've seen Adrian grow from a boy to a man, and in all that time, I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. He looks at me like an employee he's grateful to. He looks at you like you're the only real thing in his world. Mrs. Chen moved closer, her voice soft. I watched you care for him all those months. I saw you fall in love with him, and I saw him fall in love with you too, even when he couldn't move or speak. We're not... Lena's voice broke. It was never real, wasn't it? Mrs. Chen touched her shoulder gently. Maybe it started as a business arrangement, but what I saw in that room wasn't business. It was two people saving each other. Then why did he agree to end it so easily? Because he's terrified. Because everyone he's ever trusted has either betrayed him or left him. Because letting you go feels safer than risking you choosing to leave later. Mrs. Chen smiled sadly. But that doesn't mean it's what he wants. What am I supposed to do? Beg him to love me? No. But you could tell him the truth, that you love him, that you want to stay, and then let him choose. After Mrs. Chen left, Lena sat on the bed she'd barely slept in, staring at the connecting door to Adrian's room, the door she'd passed through hundreds of times. The threshold between duty and devotion, between caretaker and something infinitely more complicated. She could leave tomorrow, take the money, start over somewhere new, forget Adrian Vale and the impossible situation that had brought them together. Or she could fight for what they'd built in those quiet hours when the rest of the world thought he was unreachable. Before she could lose her nerve, Lena opened the connecting door. Adrian sat in his wheelchair by the window, staring out at the grounds. He didn't turn when she entered, but his shoulders tensed. I thought you'd be packing, he said quietly. I am packed. That was fast. I don't have much. Lena moved closer, her heart hammering. Adrian, we need to talk. About what? The settlement is more than fair. Malcolm will handle all the paperwork. You don't need to pull... I don't want the money. That made him turn. His gray eyes were shadowed, his expression carefully guarded. What? I don't want the settlement. I don't want the annulment. I don't want to leave. The words came out in a rush, terrifying and liberating. I want to stay. Adrian stared at her. Lena, you don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. I love you. Her voice shook but held firm. I fell in love with you somewhere between the second week and the second month. I don't even know when exactly. I fell in love with your stubbornness and your brilliance and the way you fought to come back. And I know this wasn't part of the deal. I know you see me as protection or obligation or whatever, but I can't leave without telling you the truth. The truth. Adrian's voice was rough. You want the truth, Lena? Yes. He wheeled closer, his eyes locked on hers with devastating intensity. The truth is I've been awake and aware for longer than I told you. Not weeks, months. I woke up during one of your first nights caring for me, and I couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't do anything except listen to you read poetry and talk about philosophy like I was still a person worth knowing. Lena's breath caught. Months? Months of falling in love with your voice, with your kindness, with the way you protected me when you had every reason to resent me. Adrian reached out, taking her hands in his. Months of being terrified that when I finally woke up, you'd see the real me and realize I wasn't worth it. Adrian, let me finish. His grip tightened. When my father told me about the annulment, I agreed immediately because I thought that's what you wanted. Freedom. Your life back. Everything you sacrificed to save your father. I thought setting you free was the right thing to do. The noble thing. And now? Now I'm realizing that nobility is just cowardice dressed up in better clothes. Adrian's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Now I'm realizing I don't want to be noble. I want to be selfish. I want to ask you to stay not because I need protection or a nurse or someone to maintain appearances, but because I love you and the thought of waking up tomorrow without you beside me is unbearable. Tears streamed down Lena's face. You love me? I love you. Adrian pulled her closer, his forehead resting against hers. I love you so much it terrifies me. Because everyone I've ever loved has either betrayed me or left. And I don't know if I could survive you doing either. Then it's a good thing I'm not planning to. Lena cupped his face in her hands. I'm staying, Adrian. Not because of a contract or obligation, but because I choose you. Every day, for as long as you'll have me, I choose you. Adrian kissed her then, fierce and desperate and achingly tender. His hands threaded through her hair, pulling her closer as if he could somehow merge them into one person. Lena kissed him back with everything she'd been holding in for months, all the fear and hope and impossible love. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. Marry me, he said. Lena laughed, the sound watery with tears. We're already married. That was a business arrangement. I want the real thing. I want vows we both choose. I want you wearing a ring I picked out, not one my father's lawyer provided. I want everyone to know you're mine, not because of a contract, but because you want to be. Yes. Lena didn't hesitate. Yes to all of it. Adrian smiled then, real and unguarded, and Lena thought she'd never seen anything more beautiful. The announcement that Adrian Vale was renewing his vows with his wife made headlines, but this time the couple didn't care about publicity or optics or controlling the narrative. They planned a small ceremony in the mansion gardens, just close family and the few friends who'd proven themselves trustworthy. Victor walked Lena down the makeshift aisle, his expression unreadable. But when he placed her hand in Adrian's, he leaned close and whispered, Take care of him. He's stronger with you than he ever was alone. I will, Lena promised. The ceremony was simple and genuine. Adrian stood on his own, his legs still weak but strengthening daily, his hand gripping Lena's like a lifeline. When it came time for vows, he spoke without notes, his voice clear and steady. Lena Carter, you came into my life when I was at my lowest, when I was helpless and afraid and trapped in darkness. You gave me light, you gave me hope, you gave me a reason to fight my way back. His thumb stroked over her knuckles. I promise to spend the rest of my life being worthy of that gift. I promise to choose you every day, the way you chose me. I promise to love you with everything I am and everything I'm still becoming. Lena's vows were simpler but no less heartfelt. Adrian Vale, you were supposed to be a stranger, a contract, a means to save my father. Instead, you became my purpose, my partner, my home. She squeezed his hands. I promise to stand beside you through whatever comes. I promise to see you, really see you, every single day. And I promise to love you not in spite of your scars, but because of how you've transformed them into strength. When they kissed, sealing promises made freely rather than under duress, applause erupted from their small gathering. But Lena barely heard it. All she could focus on was Adrian, solid and real, and choosing her right back. The reception was held in the garden, strings of lights transforming the space into something magical. Adrian managed to dance with Lena for one song before his legs gave out, and they ended up laughing on a bench while Dr. Reeves scolded about overdoing it. Worth it, Adrian said, pulling Lena close. Totally worth it. Weeks turned to months. Adrian's strength continued to improve until he could walk unassisted, though he still tired easily. Together, they moved out of the Vale mansion and into a smaller house on the outskirts of the city, far from the family drama, but close enough to visit. Adrian enrolled in graduate school, studying international law with a focus on human rights. Lena returned to nursing part-time, working with trauma patients who needed the kind of patience and dedication she'd developed caring for Adrian. They built a life together piece by piece. Quiet mornings drinking coffee on their porch. Long evenings discussing his cases and her patients. Lazy weekends where they did nothing but exist in each other's presence. It wasn't perfect. Adrian still had nightmares about the shooting, about betrayal, about losing everything again. Lena still struggled with anxiety about his health, about the future, about whether she deserved this happiness. But they worked through it together. That was the difference between their forced beginning and their chosen continuation. They were partners now, equals, facing life as a team rather than as keeper and kept. Marcus and Veronica were convicted and sentenced to life in prison without parole. The trials were brutal, but Adrian testified with calm precision, his words damning and final. When the verdicts were read, he showed no satisfaction, only grim relief that it was over. James Keller entered witness protection and disappeared. He sent one letter to Adrian before vanishing, apologizing again and wishing him happiness. Adrian never responded, but he kept the letter in his desk drawer. Some wounds healed better without constant reopening. Victor remained distant but supportive. He sold Adrian's shares in the family business as requested, distributed the money to charities focused on helping victims of organized crime. It wasn't redemption. Nothing could undo the damage the Vale Empire had caused. But it was a start. 1 year after their second wedding, Adrian and Lena sat on their porch as the sun set, his arm around her shoulders, her head on his chest. "I've been thinking," Adrian said quietly. "Dangerous," Lena teased. "I want to start a foundation for people who get trapped in situations like mine, like James's sister, people who need protection from powerful families." "That's a beautiful idea. I want you to help me run it." He kissed the top of her head. "You understand what it's like to make impossible choices. You understand trauma and recovery. We could help people together." Lena lifted her head to look at him. "Partners in everything?" "Partners in everything," Adrian confirmed. "Then yes. Absolutely yes." They kissed as the sun painted the sky in shades of gold and amber, the past finally behind them, the future stretching out like a promise they could actually believe in. What had begun as a deal with no escape had transformed into a choice made freely every single day. Lena chose Adrian, his strength and his vulnerability, his brilliance and his scars. And Adrian chose Lena, her fierceness and her tenderness, her protection and her love. They chose each other. And in a world built on control and manipulation and power, that choice was the most revolutionary act of all. Years later, when people asked Lena how she and Adrian had met, she would smile and say they'd found each other in the darkness. And when they asked if she believed in fate, she would think about that night in the hospital corridor, about Malcolm Gray's impossible offer, about signing her name next to a stranger's. "No," she would say, "I don't believe in fate. I believe in choices. And I chose to save my father. Adrian chose to fight his way back to consciousness. We both chose to build something real out of something forced. That's not fate. That's just two people refusing to let circumstances define them. And if the person asking looked skeptical, If they suggested that maybe there was something magical about their story after all, Lena would take Adrian's hand and squeeze it tight. The only magic, she would say, is choosing to love someone even when it's hard, even when it's complicated, even when it starts with a contract instead of romance. We chose each other. That's the whole story. Adrian would kiss her temple and add, "Best choice I ever made." And Lena, her heart full of the kind of love she'd never imagined finding in a mansion ruled by power and fear, would whisper back, "Mine too." Because in the end, that was what their story had always been about. Not destiny or fairy tales or romance novel miracles. Just two broken people choosing to heal together. Choosing to trust when trust seemed impossible. Choosing love over fear, partnership over isolation, hope over despair. They chose each other. And that choice made all the difference.